Secure. Contain. Protect. You may have seen these 3 little letters online, maybe on YouTube, DeviantArt, Reddit, or while reading creepypastas. For the longest time, I'm ashamed to admit, I had no idea what this was, but I've been seeing it everywhere for nearly a decade. So I set out for answers. I felt terror and laughter and amazement. I felt small, humbled, and inspired. The SCP Foundation is a loose collective of art, mostly stories, but also visuals, some even interactive. They all revolve around this fictional organization with the goal of securing, containing, and protecting. But from what? At the heart of every story is an often supernatural entity, object, even location, a staircase that descends forever, a monster that inhabits it. It's an innovative global project, the kind of thing that could only exist on the internet. Under a public copyright license known as Creative Commons, it's entirely open and owned by all. But something so open is also vulnerable. A door that no one locks. And as some of the biggest faces on YouTube warn, someone is trying to take the key for themselves. Welcome to Nothing is Revealed. I am a huge fan of telling a story non-traditionally. You might even say indirectly. For example, your book is about a house that's bigger on the inside than on the outside, and the inside is growing and growing to Lovecraftian degrees of hugeness. But it's not told in prose. It's told through an academic paper about a possibly non-existent documentary about the house that was written by a deceased old man and found later by a drug-addled tattoo artist. That's House of Leaves by Mark Danielewski. SCP stories employ similar tactics. They aren't told like Stephen King, they're told in a cold, bureaucratic style, like a report begrudgingly typed up by a government scientist. It makes them feel more grounded. There are even redacted bits. There are amazing stories in the SCP project. I advise you to seek them out yourself. My summary can't do them justice, but I'll at least mention a few of my favorites. SCP-013. A collection of 242 cigarettes, all of which have the words Blue Lady handwritten on them in blue ink. Subjects who smoke these start to perceive themselves as a very specific, unidentified woman with black hair and blue lipstick. This change happens progressively over weeks, but only mentally. The subject's physical body doesn't change at all. The cigarettes were found in a box in a dead man's apartment, a man who'd committed suicide and left only this note. Or, far more chilling, SCP-439, an earwig that enters a human through the mouth and causes fibrodysplasia ossificans progressiva. This exceptionally rare disease causes fibrous tissue like muscle, tendon, and ligament to ossify, to turn to bone. This bone forms an internal body cocoon, where the insect reproduces and forms a hive with hundreds of offspring. The host seeks dark, dry places in this time, like closets and heating ducts, until the cocoon progresses too far, and they slowly succumb as their organs are consumed for food or turned into egg incubation chambers. Some part of their brain always remains active though, alive, now regulating this insect factory. There are too many more to list. A nondescript green book that makes you have dreams of being a hero. A pen that, when held, will begin to write a person's entire biography, including their future death. A cookbook full of tasty dishes that poison the cook. If you're already a fan, let me know your favorites in the comments. Enter the great YouTube king himself, Mr. 25 million subs, Markiplier. For those of you who don't know him, Mark Fischbach is a tremendously successful YouTube gamer, making his name on Let's Plays of survival horror games. That's relevant. Markiplier recently made a plea to his massive audience. SCP is in trouble. According to him, a man in Russia named Andrei Duxin is trying to take advantage of the Creative Commons open nature of SCP by privately copywriting it all for himself. In Russia, anyway. You see, even though these stories were written by dozens of talented people, Duxin saw money to be made. Just because something is licensed under Creative Commons doesn't mean a creator can't profit. Indeed, some SCP contributors have profited from selling merchandise or crowdfunding sites like Patreon. Wielding his illegitimate trademark, Duxin shut down a fan-run merch store. He later admitted that he secured this Russian trademark so he could pursue big-budget films and video games. Mind you, under Creative Commons, you can already pursue big-budget films and video games, as long as you credit the original artist and also release your films and games as Creative Commons, which Duxin clearly wanted to avoid. So why does Markiplier care? Well, many of the games his channel was built on are based on SCP stories. In a weird way, he owes a lot of his success to this creative writing collab. Markiplier goes on to explain that unfortunately, money tends to win these legal battles, so he urges you to donate to the Russian SCP's legal fund. And I do too. Duxin cannot win. This begs the question, if someone can take advantage of the SCP's license like this, is Creative Commons a good thing? Would it be better off privately copyrighted? Let's go for a deep dive. Our time machine will span centuries. Let's go all the way back to 1831. A law was passed saying that you might hold the right to your privately copyrighted IP for 42 years. This law was lobbied hard by Noah Webster of Webster's Dictionary. Without a longer duration on his dictionary's copyright, when the time was up, anyone could just copy the whole of his work and sell it as their own. Which is exactly what happened, and has been happening in the dictionary world for decades. But that's a story for another time. This limit doesn't change again for, get this, almost 2 centuries. Fast forward to 1976. Now your copyright holds for 75 years. Shortly after, another act extends it even longer, 120 years. It's tripled. Why, you may be asking yourself. Well, look no further than that last act's nickname, the Mickey Mouse Protection Act. That's right. Disney lobbied as hard as they could to extend that deadline. If they hadn't, anyone could use Mickey Mouse's likeness in their creative pursuits, merchandising, whatever. But each time since, the limit only gets pushed back so far. Mickey enters the public domain in 2024, unless another act is signed. Compare this to SCP, which is better? Strict rules or loose? And better for whom? Creators? Artists? Corporations? I'm not an expert on law or art, but I am a writer and video maker, and I know I'd love for this to be my job, to produce art and turn a living. So that's my angle. First off, what is the point of private copyright law? Well, if you spent a bunch of time and money inventing something or writing novels, whatever, you want to be compensated. But beyond that, you don't want someone else to be compensated for your work. They didn't sacrifice what you did to make it. And in the era of the internet, people steal everything. Videos, tweets, characters, jokes. A little protection does ease my mind. But what about the darker implications here? Might these rules actually stifle creativity rather than incentivize it? An overprotective system can be taken advantage of. That's exactly what's happening here with the SCP. Someone is trying to acquire ownership, and therefore the privileges of ownership, without having put in the work. Or maybe they created a piece of the pie but want the whole thing. Or maybe they created a derivative work. A derivative work is exactly how it sounds. The artist takes your original work and adapts or transforms it. think Disney's Tangled compared to the original Brothers Grimm Rapunzel.
Yo, video game dudes, talk to me! Excellent!
There are tons of examples of this, but my favorite is the case of Game Genie. These were devices made for early video game consoles like the Nintendo Entertainment System and Sega Genesis. They'd basically allow you to modify the game by injecting cheats, level skips, infinite lives, whatever. Nintendo sued the manufacturer, Louis Galoob Toys, and the court ruled in favor of Game Genie and derivative work. The court's ruling said a party like Nintendo who distributes a copyrighted work cannot dictate how that work is to be enjoyed, meaning little twerps were free to modify the games and cheat. Mickey Mouse himself was created in a derivative work. His original appearance in the cartoon Steamboat Willie looks an awful lot like an old Buster Keaton film, Steamboat Bill Jr. In my opinion, this is okay. But I do find it odd that Disney, who fight copyright disputes tooth and nail, derive all their stories from older public domain ones. Cinderella, The Little Mermaid, Tangled, even Frozen. What's not okay is when they sue others who pursue these old stories. How? By claiming that their own derivative work is being copied.
And now, ladies and gentlemen, here's one of the great legends of Hollywood. She's back with us tonight, Miss Snow White. Good evening.
Oh, good evening, Mr. Archer. It is so exciting to be here tonight. I'm a little late.
In 1989, Disney sued the Academy when they dressed up performer Eileen Bowman as Snow White, one of their characters. Hilariously, Snow White was based on a German fairy tale by the Brothers Grimm. Disney has been doing this for years, effectively claiming public domain stories for their own. Now we come full circle. What's SCP's policy on derivative works? As we've mentioned, there are a lot of them. Well, as long as you attribute the SCP properly, you can create whatever derivatives you want and make money off them. There's a catch though. In keeping with SCP's Creative Commons license, you have to also release your thing under this license. This voids the private protection we spoke about earlier. If you do this, people can copy your work wholesale, do whatever they want with your characters and merch, as long as they properly attribute you. For some arguably derivative works, this is a deal breaker, like the recent and most excellent video game, Control. Developed by Remedy Entertainment, it's basically about the SCP Foundation, except they call it the FBC, or Federal Bureau of Control. With a £30 million budget, this game took 3 years and hundreds of people to make. It just doesn't make economic sense to expend all that time and money and then release the game without protection. Without it, anyone could buy the game and upload it for free, basically legal pirating. So Remedy just didn't attribute SCP. And that's okay in my mind, if making money was the only way this game could exist. Not everything can be kickstarted with millions of donations. Here's where that incentive problem rears its ugly head. To answer the question, no, SCP shouldn't need private copyright. It's fine where it is. It's not the Creative Commons system that's broken at all. It's the private one. And its dysfunction is spilling over. You want my view? We need private copyright laws. We need protection. But we don't need the exact laws we have. Such things can always be improved so that big corporations and good lawyers don't dominate the little guy. So that art like SCP can stay open sourced if it wants to, and all the Duxons in the world can't ruin it. But those corporations and lawyers are the ones with lobbying power. So don't hold your breath. Thanks so much for watching. If you like the show, please subscribe, check us out on Patreon, or share it with your friends. And reminder, if you want to be featured in the write-in episode later this year, send me an email, a video, whatever. Tell me who you are, your favorite mysteries, anything. A huge thank you to Joe Hunter for the thumbnail work, and a special thanks to the patrons, Dunsfan, Rose, SWMan3, Regina, and new patron, the mysterious and powerful Darks. As always, I'm glad you're here.